Well, hello. It has been a very long time since I was here last. Um, the last time you saw me, I was with my partner. Today, uh, I decided, you know, because of what it was that I wanted to speak about, and the urgency that I needed to speak about it, um, I was gonna do it by myself. He also did have some other things that he needed to handle on his own. So I said, no, it's all good. Don't worry about it. I'll try steer the ship by myself. Today I'm hoping it'll be a little bit more interactive with you guys. Because as I said before in the previous episodes, I wanted to focus more on what that truly means to me. So, in the process of trying to determine what makes a higher man, right? We sort of have the guidelines, and I have had episodes where I've spoken about, you know, like the 10 points and things like that. If you remember, if you don't, go back a couple of episodes and you'll see me talking about it. Today, uh, I'm tapping into my own personal bank vault. So for those that don't know, I am interested in pursuing a career in psychology, right? But my pursuit is a little nuanced, if I can put it that way. Um, I want to focus on male focused psychological interventions, right? So if you've ever watched, a Jordan Peterson video or a lecture or an interview, and you hear the way he's talking about how we've got to tackle the monster that exists within us and things like that, and how the journey of handling that monster is, I guess, an allegorical or exaggerated story of how a man goes about handling the challenges that he experiences or comes across in his lifetime. So I felt like that for me was always inspiring. And in the last episode with my partner, we actually discussed Carl Jung a little bit. If you want to talk about someone who has been instrumental in the kind of psychology that I want to tap into with my future clients, it stems a lot from his theories. So today I've got a fat stack of notes, right, on the 12 Jungian archetypes. Now, these notes were actually provided by a colleague of mine. Um, on the day that she presented these notes, it was a whole bunch of us because we're all interested in pursuing this career. Just trying to learn or like rehash, the things that we learned in our undergrad and in our honors year. Um, for when we apply for masters this year, hopefully we get in. So Hannah, thank you. I did tell you that I was gonna shout you out. I don't know how many people are gonna see this. But now you guys know that there's a special angel and her name is Hannah, and she provides us with the good stuff that we're gonna be chopping it up today. Okay. So in understanding the archetypes, we've pretty much got to get the brief overview of what it's all about. So I'm going to be reading a lot. Now, I don't think that because I'm reading a lot, I'm not going to be speaking to you guys. I will at some point, ask some questions. Will you be able to answer me right now? No, because I can't see you. But I am hoping that at some points you do find something that resonates with you. So without further ado, let's get started. Alrighty. So archetypes in essence, I'll just read the intro paragraph. Carl Jung proposed that beneath our personal unconscious lies a deeper collective unconscious shared by all humanity, containing universal patterns called archetypes. These primordial images shape our thoughts, behaviors, and development. In other words, archetypes are basic patterns of personality and experience that all human beings share. So when we're talking about the archetypes, I'll put it to you like this. These are essentially the frameworks that pretty much determine the kind of person that we are. These are influenced by our environments, our experiences, and our relationships for the most part. Okay? Thanks. So, how we see them, where are they typically expressed? So, here are a couple of examples: myths and legends, fairy tales, religious stories, movies and books, even dreams. An example is like the hero who saves the day. So, Superman, Spider Man, even Batman. And what's nice actually about Superman and Batman is that Superman is like the ultimate hero. Like everyone knows, they see him flying through the sky and like, oh my gosh, what a great guy saving the world from evil. Batman is somewhat different. Maybe the same in what their mission is, but the way they go about it is not the same. Batman is always chilling in the shadows. He's waiting to see which evil person's going to be doing which evil thing. And then he gets justice and he fades back into the shadow. Yeah, I don't know why I got deep there for a second, but let's keep going. The caregiver who looks after everyone, the rebel who challenges the system, think about Robin Hood, and the innocent who wants safety. So, how do they work, these archetypes that we're talking about? Well, they shape our personality over time. Here's an example. Someone who strongly identifies with the hero archetype, as we just discussed, may push themselves to be strong and capable. You can see it even in kids, in sports, when there's that one person that seems to be going over and above what is required within that situation or that moment. When you get older at work, you see it with the person that takes initiative and sometimes puts a lot of strain and stress on themselves. Like you also think to yourself, there's no need for you to be going so hard. But for them, it's going hard that is motivating them because that is a part of who they are. Another example is that someone influenced by the orphan archetype may be sensitive to rejection or abandonment. Now, I know that as I've said that, a few of you are probably going, yeah, I know what he's talking about. Those of us that seem to never have the right kinds of relationships, someone that seems to always be done dirty by somebody else, yet they still latch onto that person for dear life because they fear that if they lose that person, it's not just the person they're losing, it's a piece of themselves as well, which is why you hold on as tight as you can. But think of it like a wet bar of soap. The moment you squeeze it, it's going to pop, slip right out your hands. So that's something to think about. So the core structural archetypes. So I'll present it to you like this. We've got 12 sub-archetypes and 4 main ones. So think of it as like a circle. And the circle is divided into, 4 pies. And the core aspects are the umbrella, the main 4, and then within the 4, you chop it up into the sub-archetypes. So that's where I'm going to now. So we have 4 main types. We have the persona, the shadow, the anima and animus, and we have the self. So when talking about the persona, we're talking about the mask. So this is who we are in terms of how we want other people to see us. So an example of this persona is the professional guy, the strong guy, the funny guy, the good son, and the chilled friend. So this is the part of your identity that is the title in relation to the person with whom you're interacting. So who you are with your parents isn't the same as the person you are with your brother or your best friend or your significant other, etc., etc., etc. Why do we have this persona? Well, because from childhood we learn 2 things. Well, 3 things. We learn what's acceptable, what gets praised, and what gets punished. And remember, as I said, because how we interact with others is different, not just based on relation, but also experience, what's accepted by your best friend might not be accepted by your parents and vice versa. So the way in which you act with those people is you putting on different kinds of masks. So this is the persona that we're talking about. But it does have a function, this persona that we're discussing. it being that it helps us function in society, it protects the ego, our self image, from judgment. It also helps us to adapt from different settings, well, in different settings. So, like a chameleon, depending on the time of day and the kind of climate and the kind of environment we're in, we somewhat shapeshift and become what we need to be our best selves in that context. And this isn't to say that you're being false by doing that. Like, let me give you an example. So, someone like me, well, I won't even say someone like me, I'll say myself. I have friends of every color, creed, religion, and language you can think of in this country, right? And who I am with all those people, because I'm never with all of them at the same time. But when I'm with them, I present myself somewhat differently in each and every, situation. That isn't to say that I'm being dishonest or that I'm being disingenuous. I'm being myself. I just know that when I'm with these people, they unlock this part of me and the others unlock another. That's what I mean by saying that it's not bad for you to have different versions of yourself with people. Don't let someone tell you that you're being inauthentic because you are doing what's best for you in every situation. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you can have in this world, apart from your relationship with God, is the relationship with yourself. All right? There was some motivation for you. So, in as much as I've now tried to justify why it's necessary for us to be able to adapt in certain environments, we are also met with a problem at times. These problems being that you can feel fake or disconnected from yourself. You can feel like you don't know who you really are. And the last one being what I think is the most important is that you might feel exhausted from the performance that this mask compels you to put on. Now, you might think that because of what I said before and what I've just said now, it might be contradictory. That's not the case at all. There is always the thing of a good thing that's uncontrolled becomes a bad thing. So you going so far into different kinds of personalities with people will lead you to feeling lost because the core aspect or the core element of who you are gets lost in the sauce. Yes, you want to be different with people that you have different relations with, but you don't want to be separate from yourself. Because the moment you do that, oh no, then you're in big trouble. So that was the first core archetype, the persona. We move on to the second one, being the shadow. And these are the rejected parts. When we talk about the shadow work, we're talking about the work that's done in the dark, the type of work that requires us to sometimes isolate, be by ourselves, not really talk to other people. This is it right here. So what is included when we speak about these shadow parts? Anger, jealousy, greed, selfishness, prejudice, shame, aggressive thoughts, and bad impulses. Now, why do we have this shadow? Well, it forms because we try to fit into a culture and within the rules that are set by our family. In that environment, we learn that these things are either unacceptable. We feel like we should put these sides of ourselves under the cover or behind us, or the things that we feel shouldn't be felt. Now, it's important to note that the shadow parts of ourselves are not evil. Me talking about this in the way that I'm talking about it is not to say that this shadow that exists inside of you must remain there. We've got to do the work of examining what it is that we're feeling, especially when it's not a good feeling. because putting it to the side is not going to help. I mean, let me put it to you like this. How many times have you been angry at a situation and you haven't addressed it? Other people could start saying things, maybe in an attempt to help you, maybe in an attempt to make fun of you, maybe in an attempt to judge you. And it just keeps building up that pressure. Eventually, it gets to a point where you get so mad that you explode. You could stub your toe against the bed frame, but because of the anger that you've had stored up for so long, you end up having a whole fit, and people are like, what the hell, dude? Like, relax. But it's because you never addressed the things that you were feeling. And this is why I want to be a psychologist, because there's a whole lot that we're holding inside of ourselves that we feel too ashamed to let out because we fear being judged by someone. Yeah, and I'm not about that. If you know me, you know that judgment is the last thing on my mind. You see, I told you, like, in as much as it's just me talking, it's sort of like a nice, deep little conversation. And I did say that I was gonna try and tag this worksheet, man. Wow. So within the shadow, we come to find that it's not only bad things. We can also hold other attributes, not just anger and jealousy and selfishness, not just those, but we can also hold things like strength, assertiveness, passion, confidence, and creativity. It's almost like we can hold two versions of the same thing in one part of ourselves. You know, like with the anger, if you know how to convert it, you pay attention to what it is that you're feeling. You ask yourself, why did you feeling this way? You then ask yourself, what can you do to make things better? You find creative ways to express those things. Think about it like this, gents. You're having a bad day. You're getting angrier and angrier. You say to yourself, it's not good for me to be at home sitting with my thoughts if they're this negative. So what is it that most of us do nowadays? We go to the gym. We put those massive plates on those barbells. We deadlift, we squat, we bench, dumbbell press, calf raise, leg press. We do some pull-ups. We do it all. We're finding creative ways to get that thing that we're feeling out. That's the most important thing. Being able to find ways to ensure that the things that are weighing you down don't weigh you down forever. Because we don't want to sink. Okay? You got me? Are you with me right now? You better be with me, man. Because we're cooking, as I said. So, if we deny the shadow part of ourselves, we then project what it is that we're feeling. So, seeing things in others that aren't there, but because it's how we are seeing ourselves, we just want to pass it on to them. Now, when I said projection, I know that you probably have an example in your mind. I'm going to present one to you that I think you're probably very much aware of. So think of it like this. A friend of yours that you know, great guy, but he does have a bit of an insecurity. He's got a girlfriend, but you can tell that there's some parts of him that are still a little tightly wound. The girlfriend goes out. She doesn't send him a message. Instead of being concerned about, whether or not she's safe, he projects and he says, she's cheating on me. You know what I'm talking about. You've probably had a friend like this, or you've probably been that guy. But there's something that exists that's sitting deep within you that you fail to address because you feel too much shame around the shadow element of yourself. You think that by then trying to project it onto somebody else, You can deal with the situation, but it'll never work because you're assigning something to someone who isn't even aware of the fact that this is just you. You're looking at yourself through my eyes. Like if I'm looking at you and I'm telling you that you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things wrong, and you don't know what I'm talking about, eventually this person's going to start saying something that reveals the fact that this has nothing to do with you. Like as the saying goes, you let someone tell the truth long enough, eventually they tell you the truth that they didn't want to say. Bars. Damn. So like let's just make sure that we find those creative ways to work through the shadows and the projections so that we can become better people. So that was the second core archetype. Number 3 is the anima and or the animus. So the anima is the inner feminine, the animus is the inner masculine, right? In simple terms, we all have different qualities inside us that can be labeled as masculine or feminine. And I mean, these days, considering how much better, I guess you could say, people are getting at expressing themselves for themselves and not for others, they play within that gray area and bend the rules. Like you're not really having people say things like, "Oh, dude, why are you doing that? Girls do that." We're not doing that anymore. Like you watch football players, you see them now, they're playing on the pitch, but they've got like painted nails. Whack example, but it's pretty much as clear an example as I could provide because it makes perfect sense. Like you see like lady powerlifters, female powerlifters. This isn't to say that powerlifting in and of itself was gendered, but you know, these kinds of things were typically just solely assigned to men, and now women are getting into the space and they're kicking some ass. Like if you've ever seen any CrossFit videos, and for those of you that want to do the high rocks, you better sign up. I'm gonna do it this year. That's something that I'm promising myself. But like when I would watch like CrossFit videos, because that's pretty much as close to high rocks as it can get. Some of the biggest stars in this space are women. Buff, athletic. Some people will say that they look like men or they look too manly, they're too masculine, they're too buff. Others will say, "Oh my gosh, do you see her? What a fucking machine." And that's the point that the animus is trying to relate to. That conversion of the two different parts of ourselves, the core different elements, how they can sometimes blend and even cross. Alrighty. So the anima, the inner feminine, oftentimes is described as empathetic, intuitive. There's emotional connection involved, trust, and tenderness. The animus, the rigidity, is, expressed in things like logical thinking, problem solving, assertiveness, and emotional steadiness. So why is this core archetype important? Well, if we as a society force people to confine themselves to the roles typically assumed by their gender, then parts of your personality get suppressed. Now, I'm trying to tread lightly when I say this because I'm not trying to say that you have to tap into your feminine side to such an extent that your masculine side becomes extinct. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is if you are not fully expressing all that you are or all the things that you're good at, because some of the things that you're good at would be seen as gay, right? Because we know that a lot of times when the thing that you're good at is like an oddly creative kind of thing, somewhat effeminate, some of your homies will be like, "Nah, dog, that's a little weird. But hey, I won't judge you." Instead, you should be like, "Yo, dude, I'm good at this damn thing. I'm really good at this shit. And I'm not doing what I'm doing seeking your approval or anybody else's. Eventually, you're going to see what I can do with the skill that I have, whether you like it or not." That's how it should be. Bars. um, so the healthy development of this core archetype comes with balance. And how can that be found? Well, if you know you're more emotional, try and be a little bit more reasonable. If you're a little bit more reasonable, try and be a little bit more emotional. Intuition and logic, oftentimes, whilst sounding like they're similar, are on opposite sides of the spectrum. And the further you lean into one side, the other one is always just trying to play catch up, and they never really catch up to each other, which is why you need to sort of strike a balance, right? I'm not going to get too deep into this because I think you can deduce for yourself what it is that I mean. But don't be too stubborn and set in your ways if you're having a discussion with someone and you guys are coming to a disagreement. Understand that that person's perspective isn't wrong just because it isn't yours, right? That's not how things are. And I guess because I've studied psychology, I've come to realize that right and wrong a lot of the times is quite subjective, because at the end of the day, it's what you see and how you see what you see against what I see and how I see what I see. You're not right and I'm not wrong, and I'm not right and you be wrong just because I'm not agreeing. Think of it this way. In every story, there's 3 sides. There's your version, there's my version, and there's a truth. That isn't to say that your version and my version are incorrect just because the truth value is here. Because certain parts of my story relate closer to the truth than yours, but then certain parts of your story relate closer to the truth than mine. So strike that balance. That's all it is. Bars. And the last one, the last core archetype, before we get into the super interesting stuff, is the self. And this is the whole. This is all 3 that I previously mentioned pretty much coming together. The conscious and the unconscious, the strengths and the weaknesses, the persona and the shadow, the emotion and the reason. We can see it in a circle because Carl Jung made use of multiple symbols like circles, mandalas, and squares. So think of the simplest one being a circle, the completeness. And it's not just, it's an infinite completeness because, as they say, if you were to get the different angles within a circle, they are infinite. And it is true. In the same way that us incorporating all parts of ourselves together can yield somewhat infinite potential. When we are our whole self and we are accepting of everything that we are, regardless of what somebody says, how they judge us, how they will choose to see us afterwards, knowing that we are finally truly who we are meant to be, there is nothing man-made that can stop you. Now, obviously, when you exist in a system that prefers one thing to another thing, there might need to be some, adjustments for the sole purpose of your survival. But if you have the willingness to take the risk and live fully and authentically as yourself, there's no telling where you could lead yourself. Think of it as a staircase going up past the clouds. You don't know where those steps will end. The only way to know is to keep going. Bars. So we just did the 4 core archetypes, right? So now, as I said, there are an extra 12 that are chopped up and spread amongst the 4. But those 12 they exist within another prism of sorts. These being the 4 cardinal orientations. So if you've got a notepad down, the easiest way to remember these 4 cardinal orientations is through the, I guess you could say, acronym FOSE. It would be the freedom orientation, the order orientation, the social orientation, and the ego orientation. The freedom orientation is regarded as yearning for paradise, focusing on things like independence, exploration, and transformation. The order cardinal orientation provides structure to the world, focusing on things like safety, belonging, and stability. The social cardinal orientation focuses on connection to others, focusing on obviously things like relationships and emotional expression. Lastly, the ego cardinal orientation focuses on leaving a mark on the world, focusing on achievement, identity, and impact. And now that we've got those 4, I'm then going to discuss the Big 12. We've been speaking about it for a while. Well, I've been trying to hint towards it for a while, and I know that it's been taking some time, but we are finally there. This part's going to take a little bit of a while, so brace yourselves. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. So, within the ego orientation, we've got a few: the innocent, the hero, the magician, and the ruler. Right? So those are 4 of the 12 sub-archetypes that stem from the main 4. I'll give you a brief on all of them. So the innocent, the core desire of the innocent archetype is to experience happiness, safety, and goodness. The primary motivation is to believe in a hopeful and meaningful world. A fear is doing something wrong or being punished. A strength being optimism, trust, and faith in life. The shadow side of the innocent is the denial of reality and the avoidance of complexity. So the innocent seeks a sense of paradise, a world where things are good and or simple. So when things are going great, this is lovely. It brings hope and joy and all of that. But when it's not, you might try and avoid like hard truths, because you don't want something that affects the way in which your core ideal is expressed in the world. So someone that is told a negative truth about something that they really like, if they are like unable to see that part of that person or that thing or that relationship that they admire, they typically try to avoid it. I can give an example. I don't like getting too controversial, but okay, I'll speak it plainly. Broad strokes. Your favorite artist, favorite musician, think of anyone. And then that musician gets accused of doing something really bad. That really bad thing taints your entire view of this person. People do one of 2 things. One, they sort of reassess their perception of the person that they've come to admire, if not idolize. The second person either doesn't believe the claims made or doesn't care. So that's the drawback of leaning too far into this innocent orientation. But it's overall pretty good, I would say. Number 2, the hero. And I think a lot of you now might think, oh yeah, they're talking about me. This is how I do. I am the hero. I'm the hero of my own life. So of course I'm a hero. Before you congratulate yourself, let me break it down. So the core desire of the hero is proving their worth through courage and achievement. The primary motivation is mastery and overcoming obstacles. Yeah, I know a few of you are saying, like, yeah, now he's talking about me. Hold on. Their fear is weakness, failure, and vulnerability. Yeah, don't run away. I'm still talking about you. And the strength being determination, competence, and resilience. And the shadow side is arrogance, overwork, and burnout. The hero measures identity through action and performance. It pushes toward growth and improvement. However, over identification with the hero archetype can lead to chronic pressure, emotional suppression, and exhaustion. And I think now that I've added those not so positive bits, a lot of you are saying, yeah, he's talking about me, but now he's talking about something that I don't feel comfortable trying to express. But remember what I said in the beginning of the episode where I was talking about what Jordan Peterson was saying about, slaying the dragon and all of that. Becoming a hero in your own life, most of the time we see it through helping others, being there for people, going out of your way to ensure that they're okay, trying to put yourself in the best possible positions to provide for your family and things like that. We want to do right and achieve things so that we can do more of those right things. But we sort of have to ensure that as we're doing that, we're not feeding into the belief that this is all that I am. Because the day that you are unable to help someone that really needed it, how will you see yourself? You'll be consumed by guilt. You'll feel ineffectual. You'll feel like your worth is pretty much vanished, like sand that slips through your fingers. Am I still talking about you? I hope so. Third, the magician. The core desire of the magician is to transform and to change. They're primarily motivated by understanding deeper systems and influencing outcomes. Fear is an unintended harm or loss of control. The strength is vision, insight, and strategic thinking. The shadow side of a magician is manipulation or grandiosity. The magician wants to understand how things work beneath the surface and use that knowledge to create transformation. At its best, it brings innovation and healing. When distorted, it may seek control through subtle influence. Think about the person that has relationships with damn near everybody. The most popular person, wherever it is that they go, somebody knows who that person is. And they can have a 4 or 5 minute conversation. They're able to become whatever the situation compels them to be. And through that subtle ability to change, they're able to influence how other people interact with him. Now think about what kind of power that person is being given, though we may not realize it. That is something to think about. Lastly, within the ego types is the ruler. The core desire of the ruler is control and stability. The primary motivation being creating order and success. Fear is chaos or losing authority. The strength being leadership, responsibility, and organization. Shadow side of the ruler is rigidity and authoritarian tendencies. Now, for those of you that sort of thought you were siding with the hero, you might hear the ruler and think, yeah, that one actually makes a little bit more sense. They're somewhat similar, but not entirely. Because remember, the hero wants to do for others and gets I guess you could say, a reward through their appreciation and expression of appreciation. And you like the fact that you were part of something or you did something directly that made someone else feel good. The ruler is more about how best to create systems or how best to work within a system to get the greatest outcome for myself. The hero is selfless, the ruler is selfish, just to, simplify it. And the bossy person, the person that thinks everyone has to bend to their will no matter what, you're probably thinking of your mother, your father, that ex best friend of yours, your boss that you hate because that boss is a right bastard. It happens. We do have those kinds of people in our life that think that the only way, that we can succeed in their world is by groveling and kissing the ring. Never sacrifice your self respect to get that person's approval. It'll never be for your benefit. Bars. Now we shift. We're in the order types now. So we've got the caregiver, whose core desire is to protect and nurture. Their primary motivation being supporting others' well being. Their fear is being selfish or unneeded. Their strength is compassion and generosity. The shadow side of the caregiver is martyrdom, resentment, and self neglect. Think of the hero, but like on steroids. This person pretty much creates an entire identity out of how effective a person, how effective a giver they are to other people. They thrive on being needed by others. And when it's positive and you're helping people, then great. But when it's with people that have strained relations, they get off on the fact that that person needs me. They can't do without me. And these people oftentimes feel overwhelmed and angered at the fact that they are constantly harassed by people trying to get something from them. But deep down, if they were to investigate, they'd come to find that I like the fact that they need my help. So you see how it can quickly go from I love helping people to I love how they need me. Be wary of tapping in too deep if you've got this caregiver archetype, okay? The next one being the everyman, otherwise known as the orphan, whose core desire is belonging. Their primary motivation being connection and equality. The fear being rejection or isolation. Strength being empathy, realism, and humility. The shadow side of the everyman or orphan is losing one's identity to fit in. So these people, in essence, are just trying to find someone to accept them, make them feel included in something. They value things like authenticity and shared humanity. In excess, though, you suppress your individuality because you don't want to stand out. So think of it as someone who's got a typically shy demeanor. They just really not only are they shy, they're just also not that expressive. And they've got a couple of friends, one or two, who they really cling on to really tight. They find difficulty in finding where they ought to be. So they decide to be everywhere. Not wanting to cause too much friction or be too selective. It's more about, hey, you guys say it's cool, then okay, I guess it's cool. I don't even have to say what the problem with that could be, right? Because I think just by me giving you that little example, you're probably like, yeah, nah, you don't want to be someone like that, because then people are just going to walk all over you and get you to do whatever it is that they want. But because you desire to feel close to them, then you're like, okay, it's fine, whatever. This is where you need to make sure that the people in your circle have your best interests. You need to do an inventory check and make sure that, these are the kinds of people that I need in my life. And if they don't meet those requirements, then they can skedaddle straight up. Bars. The last one is the creator, whose core desire is to create something meaningful. They're primarily motivated by self expression and innovation. They fear mediocrity or wasted potential. Their strength is imagination and originality. Their shadow side is perfectionism and dissatisfaction. The creator seeks to bring ideas to reality. It values originality and vision. When balanced, it produces beauty and innovation. When unbalanced, it may become paralyzed by perfectionism. Yeah, those of us that have that, I won't say rigidity, but that tunnel vision focus on what it is that we think we are going to achieve with the thoughts and the visions and the dreams and the goals that we have in our mind. We think, I've got to do this. Once it gets done, it's going to become big. It's going to become great, excellent. Everyone's going to love it. And through them loving it, they also love me. You run into the issue of depending too much on the outcome of the thing that you're fixating over. So don't do that to yourself. The social types, we now finished the order and the ego. So we did the OE. Now it's time for the S and the F. So in the social type, we've got some pretty interesting ones. First one being the lover archetype, whose core desire is intimacy and emotional closeness. The lover is primarily motivated by deep connection and appreciation. Their fear is being unwanted and or alone. Their strength is passion, gratitude, and commitment. The shadow side of the lover is a dependency or loss of self, but in the romantic essence, not like the orphan who just loses themselves wherever. The lover specifically for, that close kind of bond. The lover seeks emotional intensity and closeness. At its best, it fosters meaningful bonds. When unbalanced, it may prioritize connection at the expense of personal identity. So think of the person who is unlucky at love because they fall in love with everyone that they're with. And when that relationship eventually ends, it's almost like they are no longer themselves because a part of them is gone now. They just keep trying to find someone with whom they can build something instantly serious with. Many of us have had those kinds of issues. I'll expose myself. I had that issue once because, damn, there was just some thunder. I didn't expect it to shake the room. But like you have this feeling that because it's so young or so fresh, it's like there's a beauty and excitement to it, especially when you haven't really dated much. And this person seems like they tick all the right boxes. You just want to give them everything that they want from you. And what you don't realize is you're making concessions so often that who you are in the relationship is just that person's lapdog. You don't ever want to be that kind of a person. Wake up. If there are things that you don't like, you need to be able to respectfully address them, because if you can't, then you are in big, big, big trouble. Okay? Bars. Next, the jester. The core desire of the jester is joy and enjoyment. They're primarily motivated by living fully in the present. They fear being bored. Their strength is playfulness, humor, and spontaneity. The shadow of the jester is the avoidance of deeper emotions. Think of that friend of yours that just never takes life too seriously. And the moment you try and have a serious discussion, the first thing they try and do is ignore it. They're like, I don't really need to talk about that. In other situations, say you and your friends are trying to have a discussion around politics. Easy example, right? I'm like, nah, don't get political, bro. I'm all good, man. Let's just have a good time and live life. Yeah, I get that, but like there's a reason why we need to have these kinds of discussions. So you don't want to be the kind of person that avoids anything that might be difficult to discuss just because you fear that, it might make you upset and other people uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to be the one that's a bit stern. That's all I'm saying. Number 10 is the sage. Their core desire is truth and understanding, primarily motivated by knowledge and clarity. They fear ignorance or being misled. Their strength is wisdom and insight. And the shadow side of the sage is over analysis and emotional detachment. The ever so calm person who seems to always know exactly what to say, exactly when they need to say it, to exactly who needs to hear it. They seem like they can give you advice on everything and never be wrong. But they do have a shadow, and that those people are probably plagued by so many different thoughts replaying in their mind. That one thing that they regretted saying 5 years ago could still, be a very prominent thought and part of their everyday thinking. They also, on the other end, can be very cold in a way that almost makes it seem like they don't care about you per se. The outcome of the situation is what is more important, not necessarily who is to gain or to lose from it. So don't be too hard on trying to be right, because we're human and humans are imperfect. Just saying. Bars. And then we've got the last two in the freedom archetype. So, first one, the explorer, whose core desire is freedom and self-discovery. Primarily motivated by authentic living, they have the strength of being independent and very ambitious. The fear is confinement or inner emptiness. And the shadow of the explorer is restlessness or chronic dissatisfaction. The explorer searches for meaning through experience. They value autonomy and growth. In excess, though, they may struggle to commit or struggle to settle. These are the kinds of people that really want to go out of their way to make their life the most individual, specific kind of lifestyle there is. You know that kind of a person who seems to always be going somewhere, doing something, seeing something, experiencing something. You're like, how in the hell are you able to do all of that? Well, it's because they have the desire to live life a certain kind of way, so they make way to live it like that. But the problem is, if they're always out there trying to do something with their life and they never sit in or sit down and try and breathe, they'll keep running till the tank is empty, but they're going downhill, so they'll just keep going. Eventually they'll crash. So don't tap in too hard. The last one, the rebel. Their core desire is revolution and change. Their primary motivation is to challenge what is broken. Their strength is the courage to disrupt unhealthy systems. They have a fear of being powerless. And the shadow of the rebel is destruction without direction. We can see this more often than not with our political friends who are very much out in the streets, taking it to the man, letting people know that we're not standing for whatever the hell is going on right now. It speaks to something that sits deep within them. They've never really agreed to co-sign that which is unfair. You can see it with, I can even say there's like a a separate form of rebel who never really had a reason to resist, changing the system because they were probably benefiting from the way it was structured. So when you see some of them now in the fight saying that this is messed up and we've got to change it, you sort of end up asking yourself, why are you even here? Like, you're not affected by this. And their thinking, their rationale is, I don't have to be affected by something wrong for me to be against it. This is just basic humanity. Maybe you need to check yours. That's how they typically, try and present themselves. And I think it's very important to have those kinds of people in your life. Maybe you can't be that person for yourself, but you do need to have someone like that in your life, because if you're ever in a situation where something is happening to you that you don't realize, you need to have someone that's going to wake you up and tell you that, hey, Chief, this person is abusing you and they're taking you for a, yeah, let me not get too vulgar. So I'm glad that, I got to talk about this with you guys. It's something that I have studied for a very long time. I hope that, with time I can become someone that can make this part of my therapy with my clients. But after listening to me ramble for so long, what archetype do you think you are? A better way to ask this question is, who do you think you are? Why do you think you're like that? And with knowing who you are, what it is you do, what do you think will come of your life? Think about it. I'll see you guys.